I was overjoyed as I left the notary and headed home to share the news with my husband and mother-in-law that my grandmother had left me 2 apartments and a summer house. But the moment I stepped inside, I overheard their conversation, and I froze in horror at what I heard. Before we continue, don't forget to write in the comments which country you're from and how old you are. Enjoy listening. The late afternoon sun draped the cobblestone streets in a warm, golden embrace, its rays filtering through the budding leaves of ancient oaks that lined the city's historic district. I stepped out of the notary's office, my fingers trembling around a crisp manila envelope that felt heavier than its thin contents should allow. My heart was a wild symphony of disbelief, joy, and something akin to reverence. My grandmother, Nana, my storyteller, my confidant, the woman who'd painted my childhood with magic and warmth, had left me an inheritance beyond comprehension. 2 luxurious apartments in the heart of the city's most coveted high-rise, and her cherished summer house by Lake Serenity, a place woven into the very fabric of my soul. I couldn't wait to get home and share the news with my husband Daniel and my mother-in-law Evelyn, who'd been living with us since her husband's death 2 years ago, her presence a constant shadow in our cramped suburban home. As I slid into the driver's seat of my weathered sedan, the leather creaking softly under my weight, my mind buzzed with possibilities. The apartments, perched in a sleek glass tower with panoramic views of the city skyline, were worth millions, enough to erase the financial burdens that had haunted us for years. The summer house, with its weathered cedar walls, wraparound porch, and the gentle lapping of lake water against its private dock, was more than property. It was a sanctuary. I could still hear Nana's laughter as we baked blueberry pies in the cramped kitchen, her flour-dusted hands guiding mine. I could see her silhouette on the porch, her voice weaving tales of far-off adventures as fireflies flickered like tiny stars against the velvet night. This inheritance wasn't just money, it was freedom. Freedom from the medical bills that had piled up after Daniel's car accident 3 years ago, leaving him with a limp and a struggling art career that barely paid for his paints. Freedom from Evelyn's relentless criticisms, her icy gaze and sharp tongue turning every family dinner into a battlefield of passive-aggressive jabs. Freedom to finally start the family Daniel and I had dreamed of, the one we'd postponed as life's pressures mounted, squeezing the air from our hopes. The drive home was a blur, the city's lights smearing into streaks of gold and white as I wove through rush-hour traffic. I pictured Daniel's reaction, his warm brown eyes crinkling with that boyish grin that had stolen my heart 10 years ago in a crowded college lecture hall. I imagined him pulling me into his arms, his laughter mingling with mine as we planned our future, a new home, a nursery, a life unburdened by debt. Even Evelyn, with her perpetually pursed lips and cold demeanor, might soften for once, her stern expression giving way to a rare smile. The thought warmed me as I pulled into the driveway of our modest suburban home, its faded blue paint peeling at the edges, a stark contrast to the gleaming possibilities now within reach. But as I stepped out of the car, a strange unease prickled at the back of my neck, like a whisper of warning I couldn't quite hear. The living room curtains were drawn tight, unusual for the late afternoon when Daniel usually craved natural light for his sketches, his easel perpetually set up by the window. The house was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that feels heavy, expectant, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I slipped my key into the lock, the envelope still clutched in my hand, its edges slightly crumpled from my nervous grip. The door opened with a soft creak, and I paused, my breath catching in my throat. Something felt wrong, off in a way I couldn't name, a dissonance in the air that set my nerves on edge. Before I could call out, voices drifted from the kitchen, low and urgent, cutting through the stillness like a blade through silk. Daniel's voice, sharp and edged with something unfamiliar. Anger, fear, smugness, followed by Evelyn's cold, measured tone, each word deliberate, calculated, dripping with intent. My heart thudded, a wild rhythm that echoed in my ears, drowning out the hum of the refrigerator. An instinct I didn't understand told me to stay silent, to listen. I tiptoed across the hardwood floor, wincing as it creaked faintly under my weight, and pressed myself against the wall just outside the kitchen doorway, the envelope trembling in my hands, its paper crinkling softly in the quiet. "She doesn't suspect a thing," Daniel was saying, his voice carrying a smugness that sent a chill down my spine. A coldness I'd never heard from the man I'd married. "We've been careful, Evelyn. She's too wrapped up in her own little world, her job, her grandmother's stories, her naive trust, to notice anything." My breath caught, my mind reeling as if I'd been struck. Suspect. What? My fingers tightened around the envelope, the paper crumpling further under my grip. I leaned closer, straining to catch every word, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure they'd hear it, a traitor giving away my presence. Evelyn's voice sliced through the air, sharp and venomous, a serpent's hiss in the stillness. "Good, because if she finds out, Daniel, it's over. Everything we've worked for, gone. You know what's at stake. That inheritance is ours. It was always meant to be ours." Inheritance? My blood turned to ice, my stomach lurching as if I'd plummeted from a great height. They couldn't know about Nana's will. I hadn't told a soul. The notary had called me just this morning, his voice formal but kind as he asked me to come to his office, explaining that Nana's estate had been finalized. I hadn't even hinted at it to Daniel during our rushed breakfast, too stunned to process the news myself. How could they know? My thoughts spiraled, a sickening dread pooling in my stomach as I pressed myself closer to the wall, the cool plaster grounding me against the chaos in my mind. "She's too soft," Evelyn continued, her tone dripping with disdain, each word a barb aimed at my heart. "Always has been. She'll hand it over without a fight if we play it right. You just need to keep her in line, Daniel. Make her think it's her idea to sign the papers." Daniel let out a low chuckle, a sound that twisted my heart like a knife. It wasn't the warm, familiar laugh that had charmed me during our late-night talks, the one that had made me believe in forever when he proposed under a starlit sky. This was cold, calculated, cruel, a stranger's laugh in my husband's voice. "Don't worry, Mother. I've got her wrapped around my finger. 10 years of marriage, and she still thinks I'm her knight in shining armor. The world tilted, the floor beneath me seeming to sway as if I were on a ship in a storm. My knees buckled, and I pressed a hand against the wall to steady myself, my breath shallow and ragged. Daniel, my Daniel, the man who'd held me through sleepless nights after my father's death, who'd promised to love me through sickness and health, who'd kissed me softly just this morning, was plotting against me? With Evelyn, the woman who'd never approved of me, who'd criticized my cooking, my clothes, my very existence since the day we met, her eyes narrowing at my every move as if I were an intruder in her son's life. My chest tightened, a storm of betrayal and rage surging through me, threatening to drown me. I wanted to storm in, to scream, to demand answers, to tear apart the lies they were weaving. But that same instinct held me back, whispering that I needed to know more, how deep this betrayal ran, what they were planning, and why. It's not just the apartments, Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that sent a shiver down my spine, as if the air itself had grown colder. The summer house. It's worth more than she realizes. There's something hidden there, Daniel. Something your grandmother never told her. If we can get to it before she does. Hidden? At the summer house? My mind flashed to Nana's stories, the ones she'd tell me late at night on the porch, the lake shimmering under the moonlight, fireflies flickering like tiny stars against the velvet night. She'd spoken of secrets, treasures tucked away in hidden corners, her eyes twinkling with mischief as she spun tales of adventure and mystery. I'd always thought they were just stories, crafted to spark my imagination, to make our summers magical. Could there be truth to them? And what did Evelyn mean by something hidden? My pulse raced, my hands trembling as I clutched the envelope tighter, its edges now damp with sweat from my clammy palms. What if she doesn't sign the papers? Daniel asked, his tone shifting to unease, a crack in his usual confidence that made my stomach twist. She's not as gullible as you think, Evelyn. She loved her grandmother. She might get suspicious. Then we make sure she doesn't have a choice, Evelyn snapped, her voice like a whip cracking through the air, sharp and unyielding. You know what to do. You've done it before. Done what? The words echoed in my mind, each one a dagger twisting deeper, drawing blood from wounds I hadn't known existed. What had Daniel done before? My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst, my vision blurring with unshed tears. The life I'd built, the love I'd trusted, was unraveling before me, thread by thread. I couldn't stay there, listening to their venomous plans, but I couldn't confront them either. Not yet. I needed to protect myself, to understand the full scope of their scheme, to uncover the truth Nana had hidden. Moving as silently as I could, I backed away, my breath shallow and uneven, my footsteps careful against the creaking floor. I slipped out the front door, closing it with the softest click, and hurried to my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the keys, the envelope now a lifeline in my lap, its weight both a burden and a beacon. I drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring through tears I hadn't realized were falling, streaming down my cheeks in hot, silent rivulets. My mind was a storm of questions, each one sharper than the last, cutting through the memories of our life together. Our first date at the art gallery, Daniel's shy smile as he showed me his sketches, his fingers brushing mine as we laughed over cheap coffee. Our wedding day, his vows promising forever, his eyes locked on mine as if I were his entire world. The quiet nights when he'd hold me, whispering dreams of a future we'd build together, a house with a garden, a child with his eyes, a life filled with love. Had it all been a facade? A carefully crafted lie to get to Nana's fortune? The betrayal was a physical ache, a wound that throbbed with every heartbeat, threatening to consume me. As dusk settled, painting the sky in hues of violet and gold, I found myself on the winding road to Lake Serenity, 2 hours from the city. The summer house loomed ahead, its silhouette dark against the twilight, the lake shimmering faintly beyond, its surface a mirror of stars. Nana's sanctuary. If there was something hidden here, I had to find it before they did. I parked and stepped inside, the familiar scent of cedar and lavender wrapping around me like a hug, a fleeting comfort in the chaos of my heart. Memories flooded back. Nana teaching me to bake bread in the tiny kitchen, her hands dusted with flour as she sang old folk songs in a lilting voice. Her laughter as we skipped stones across the lake, the ripples spreading like secrets. Her cryptic tales of adventure and mystery, her eyes twinkling with a knowing glint. I shook them off, focusing on the task at hand, the weight of her legacy pressing against my shoulders. I started in the attic, where Nana had kept her old trunks, relics of a life I'd only glimpsed through her stories. The narrow staircase creaked under my weight, the air thick with dust as my flashlight beam cut through the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the slanted walls. The attic was a labyrinth of boxes, old furniture, and forgotten relics, each one a piece of Nana's past, a puzzle waiting to be solved. But one item stood out, a leather-bound chest with a brass lock, tucked in a corner beneath a faded quilt, its surface worn but beautiful, as if it held secrets too precious to reveal. I'd seen it as a child, its presence a quiet mystery, but I'd never thought to open it. Now my heart raced as I knelt before it, my fingers brushing the cool, rusted metal, the lock giving way with a firm tug, the hinges groaning as the lid opened. Inside was a treasure trove of memories, letters tied with twine, their edges yellowed and curling, black and white photographs of Nana in her youth, her smile radiant, her eyes alight with adventure, a small velvet pouch, its fabric soft against my trembling fingers. I opened the pouch, revealing an ornate antique key, its surface etched with intricate designs that seemed to shimmer in the flashlight's glow, as if imbued with a life of its own. Beneath the letters was a journal, its leather cover worn but intact, filled with Nana's elegant handwriting, each stroke a testament to her strength. I opened it, my eyes scanning entries that revealed a side of her I'd never known. Nana hadn't just been my kind, quirky grandmother. She'd been a woman of mystery, a collector of rare artifacts, a keeper of dangerous secrets. One entry, dated 20 years ago, stopped me cold. The key unlocks the safe beneath the floorboards in the cellar. What lies inside is for Emily alone. If they find it, they'll destroy her. I've hidden the truth from Daniel and his mother for her sake. I pray she finds it first. My breath hitched, a sob catching in my throat as Nana's words reached across time, a warning and a lifeline. She had known. She'd known about Daniel and Evelyn, or at least suspected their greed, their betrayal. I raced to the cellar, my flashlight shaking in my hand as I descended the rickety stairs, the air cool and damp, heavy with the scent of earth and time. I found the loose floorboard she'd described, its edges worn from years of secrets, and pried it up, revealing a small safe, its lock matching the key from the pouch. With trembling hands, I opened it, the hinges creaking as the lid lifted, revealing a collection of documents, a velvet box of jewelry, and a letter addressed to me in Nana's handwriting. I tore it open, my heart pounding as I read. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, you've uncovered the truth, or part of it. The apartments and summer house are yours, but they're only the beginning. The jewelry is worth millions, but the real treasure is the truth about your husband and his mother. They've been after my fortune for years, ever since Daniel married you. I tried to warn you, but you were so in love, so trusting, your heart too pure to see their darkness. Use what's in this safe to protect yourself. Trust no one, not even those closest to you. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you sooner. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the ink, each word a hammer against the fragile walls of my heart. Daniel had married me for Nana's fortune, and Evelyn had been pulling the strings all along, orchestrating a decade-long deception. The documents in the safe confirmed it. Bank records showing unauthorized withdrawals from Nana's accounts, forged signatures on legal papers, evidence of Daniel and Evelyn's schemes dating back years, long before we'd even met. But one item caught my eye. A photograph of a younger Evelyn with a man I didn't recognize, their arms around each other, smiling by a lake that looked like Lake Serenity, their faces alight with a happiness that seemed alien to the Evelyn I knew. On the back, in Nana's handwriting, were the words, Evelyn and Victor, 1985, before the betrayal. Victor. The name sparked a memory, faint but persistent, like a half-forgotten dream. Nana had mentioned a man named Victor once, a friend who'd vanished after a falling out, his name spoken with a mix of fondness and sorrow, her eyes distant as if revisiting a wound. Could he hold the key to this puzzle? I gathered the contents of the safe, documents, jewelry, the photograph, the letter, and stuffed them into my bag, my hands shaking with a mix of fear and determination. I couldn't stay at the summer house. Daniel and Evelyn would realize I hadn't come home, and they'd come looking, their greed driving them to the lake. I drove to a nearby motel, its neon sign flickering in the darkness like a warning, and checked in under a false name, my phone buzzing relentlessly with Daniel's calls, each one a reminder of the lies I'd lived. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own life, piecing together the fragments of a truth I'd been too blind to see. I hired a private investigator, a gruff man named Carl with a reputation for digging up buried secrets, his weathered face and sharp eyes inspiring a cautious trust. I handed him the photograph and Nana's journal, explaining what I'd overheard, my voice trembling as I recounted the betrayal. Carl's eyes narrowed as he studied the evidence, his fingers tracing the photograph's edges. "This is big, Emily," he said, his voice low, "but we'll get to the bottom of it. I'll find Victor." Within 48 hours, Carl called with news. Victor was alive, living under a new name in a small town an hour away, a recluse who kept to himself, wary of strangers. "He's cautious," Carl warned. "Doesn't trust easily, but he's willing to talk, for your grandmother's sake." I met Victor in a dimly lit diner, its vinyl booths cracked and faded, the air thick with the scent of coffee and grease, the jukebox playing a soft, mournful tune. He was older now, his hair graying, his face lined with years of hardship, but his eyes softened when I mentioned Nana's name, a flicker of warmth breaking through his guarded demeanor. Over steaming mugs of coffee, Victor told me everything, his voice low and heavy with memory. Evelyn had been his fiancée decades ago, a fiery young woman he'd loved deeply, their dreams of a simple life shattered when she learned of Nana's wealth, her collection of rare artifacts and hidden treasures. Evelyn's ambition had consumed her, turning love to greed, and she'd betrayed him, manipulating her own son, Daniel, into marrying me to get closer to the fortune. Victor had uncovered their plans and confronted her, only to be threatened with ruin, forced to disappear under a new identity to protect himself. "They're dangerous, Emily," he warned, his eyes haunted, his hands gripping the mug as if anchoring himself to the present. "Evelyn's ruthless, and Daniel's too weak to stand up to her. But your grandmother, she was clever. She hid the truth to protect you, knowing this day might come." Armed with Victor's testimony and the documents from the safe, I felt a fire ignite within me, a resolve born of Nana's love and my own survival. She had trusted me to protect her legacy, and I wouldn't let her down. I returned home, my heart pounding but my resolve unshaken, the weight of the evidence in my bag a shield against their lies. Daniel and Evelyn were waiting, their faces a carefully crafted mask of concern. But I saw the greed in their eyes, the hunger they couldn't hide. "Where have you been?" Daniel demanded, his voice laced with irritation, his hands fidgeting nervously as he stepped closer. "We've been worried sick." I held up the notary's envelope, watching their eyes gleam with avarice, a predator's glint in the dim light. "Nana left me everything," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me, each word a step toward reclaiming my power. "The apartments, the summer house, everything. But I know what you've been planning. I heard you in the kitchen, and I found the safe." Their faces paled, Evelyn's lips tightening into a thin line, her eyes cold as steel, a snake poised to strike. Daniel stammered, trying to weave a lie, his hands reaching for me as if to pull me back into his deception. "Emily, you're misunderstanding. Let me explain." "No," I cut him off, holding up the documents, my voice a blade of its own. "I have proof. Bank records, forged signatures, Victor's testimony. It's over." The days that followed were a whirlwind. Lawyers, police, a divorce filing that felt like cutting away a piece of my heart. Each step a painful but necessary severing of the life I'd known. The apartments and summer house were mine, secured by Nana's foresight and my determination. But the real victory was my freedom, a reclaiming of the self I'd lost in their lies. I sold one apartment to fund a foundation in Nana's name, helping women escape manipulative relationships, a tribute to her strength and love, a way to turn pain into purpose. The summer house became my refuge, a place to heal, to honor her memory, to rebuild my life from the ashes of betrayal. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching fireflies dance over the lake, their glow mirrored in the still water, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. The breeze carried the scent of lavender, and I could almost hear Nana's voice, whispering that I was enough, that I was strong, that I was hers. Her true inheritance wasn't the properties or the jewelry. It was the courage to uncover the truth, to stand up to those who'd betrayed me, and to reclaim my future. And for that, I'd be forever grateful.